Welcome back, guys. My name is Chris, and in this video, I want to talk to you about posting groups in Business Central. This is a subject that I feel a lot of new users with Business Central struggle with, and there's a few reasons for that, but especially because a lot of the people that are coming onto Business Central for the first time are coming from a system like QuickBooks, or maybe just even Excel, and these do not utilize posting groups. In something like QuickBooks, if you're making a journal entry, let's say for an electrical expense, you simply specify what is the account that's going to be impacted from that electrical expense. In Business Central, they decided to handle it differently, whereas instead of putting in specific accounts, you instead put in posting groups, which are just these somewhat arbitrary labels or categories that will basically allow the system to know if these posting groups are specified, then these accounts are going to be hit. So it does the account selection in the background based on the posting groups that you select. And overall, the idea is that it makes it so your users don't have to memorize the chart of accounts, and it takes out some user error by having them select a more limited number of posting groups, and ideally posting groups that they understand the concept of and are pretty simple for them. And while that's a rational way to look at it, I personally find, and as you'll see over the course of this video, when you start to get into all the different components of posting groups and how they work, I personally feel like it adds another layer of complexity that arguably doesn't overall make things simpler in the system as a whole. Maybe on a user-to-user basis, it will help some people, but I don't think it makes Business Central easier to work with in general. So with that in mind, let's take a look now at a graphic that's going to show us the three types of posting groups in Business Central. So I'll pull that up. So just to be clear, what we're about to lay out here are not posting groups, it's posting group types. It's a higher level categorization of the different types of posting groups that will exist. And I'll show you posting groups as we get later in this video. So first off, the first posting group type is called general. We then have one called specific, and then the third one is called tax. So let's focus on general first. So general posting group as a type, that I would say, think of that in terms of the income statement. If you look at the entire chart of accounts, some accounts are going to be related to the income statement. So that's going to be things like COGS, which is an expense account. You can also have any kind of sales accounts, depreciation, etc. Anything related to that, any of those accounts that are going to be influenced, those are going to be related to the general posting group type. Okay, then you get to specific, and that's going to be relevant to the accounts that you would find in the chart of accounts related to the balance sheet. So that would be things like asset accounts. That might be an inventory account or accounts receivable. It could also be accounts payable, etc. So things that you would generally see on a balance sheet, those are the kind of things you're going to be dealing with in relation to specific posting groups as opposed to general posting groups for income statement type accounts. And tax is pretty self-explanatory, where any tax related transactions, that's going to be going into that posting group. And it does split off from there. I'll get to that in a second. So let's double back now on general. Those are the three major posting group types. Underneath that, we get to the actual posting groups. And starting with general, we have two posting groups underneath that. The first one is called general business posting group, and the second one is general product posting group. And I'll list them out here, especially in the form that you'll often see them written as, which is abbreviated. So you see it like gen, prod, posting group, etc. And when we're talking about general business posting group, think about that like the who to any question or transaction. When you get to general product posting group, you're more talking about the what. So for example, as I pointed out with this electrical expense, if that's what we were dealing with, if the electrical expense was to the utilities company, the who would be the utilities company, which is basically a vendor. And then when you look at the what, it would be electricity, or, if it's for a transaction, the items that are purchased, that would be the what. The customer that's purchasing something, that would be the who. So that's how you would split those two things up. And to give you a better understanding of how that actually works in the system, because so far this is all theoretical, let's actually dive into Business Central. So if we want to get into general posting groups, the first place we would go is the general posting setup. And you can see that right here, general posting setup. And if we click on that, This should start to make a bit more sense. So what we've got here is general business posting group. So that's this column. And then here we have the general product posting group in this column. So again, this is all relevant to the general type posting groups as opposed to specific or tax. So within general, which again is tied to income statement accounts, this is where we've got the split where general business posting group is going to be the who, and then general product posting group is going to be relevant to the what. So as you can see, on the left side are three options here, which keep in mind, this is just a demo account. So this is just an example of how this might be, not written in stone. In this particular account, we have as options for the who, we have domestic, EU, and export. So as you can see, this would be relevant. You choose domestic if you're dealing with customers or vendors that are domestic. If they're in the EU, you're going to choose this option. If it's an export situation, you're going to choose that third option. These are all relevant to who is the person being interacted with, whether we're purchasing something from them or we're selling something to them. That's how you would select that posting group. Good. Now let's go over to general product posting group, which is relevant to the what. If we open that up, you can see we have things like manufacturing, raw materials, retail, services. These are all relevant to a what, which is, like let's say we're talking about items here. If we're selling a widget, is this widget something that is going to be sold as retail? Is it a service? Maybe it's a widget that we get that we use in our manufacturing process, so it's relevant to raw materials or manufacturing. Maybe it's going to be relevant to freight, etc. You get the idea. So again, these are all relevant to the what side of the question. And when you see these two things laid out next to each other, this whole concept of posting groups starts to make a little bit more sense. It's not that you would just choose domestic. It's the combination of these two that's going to allow what we see over here on the right. I'm just scrolling over very rapidly. You see all of these various columns. These are all columns where this is happening underneath the hood. This is going to be Business Central using this matrix to know if there's a combination of the general business posting group domestic and the general product posting group raw materials. If we're dealing with inventory adjustments, then great, this is the exact account that's going to be used. If we're dealing with COGS, then this is the account that's going to be used. But if we're dealing with EU and manufacturing, a different COGS account gets used. So you can see it's this intersection where if you know this with this is the account that's going to be used. But if it's this and this, A and B is here, D and E is going to be here, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is a consultant can come in here with a deep understanding of the chart of accounts, can put in these simple posting groups and then put in the long, more complicated concept of all the various accounts that are going to be hit depending on the circumstance. And then the general user can just go in and go, oh, I know how to do this. In this case, this sale is domestic because the customer is domestic and it's a retail product. So I put in retail. And that's a pretty simple concept for someone like a sales rep to understand and attribute to a transaction. So that's the general concept, and that's how those two things come together. So let's now jump back into that graphic that we had. We've got general, we've talked about that. We now understand when we would use general business posting group, when we would use general product posting group. Now if we get to specific as a type, underneath that, there are many different types of posting groups. You can have customer posting groups, vendor posting groups, inventory posting groups, bank posting groups, et cetera, et cetera. So many different types. And again, these are all tend to be related to the balance sheet in terms of accounts. One additional aspect, which I'm going to add into this diagram here, is that these accounts tend to be indirect posting. What I mean by that is these tend to be accounts where you're not going to be putting in, for example, a journal entry to impact that account. It will tend to be through transactional records. So things like invoices or purchase orders, etc., receipts, any of these things that happen as a part of normal transactions and then have a general ledger impact. Those will tend to go to these specific posting groups as opposed to what we saw in general posting groups, whether business or product. Those are often direct posting. So in the example we gave with the electrical expense, that's a journal entry you could just go in and directly make. It's not part of an invoice necessarily. You put in a journal entry and you say, great, we just recorded that for the month of May, we had a bill of $500 for electrical expenses. You can put that in directly and it will directly hit those necessary accounts. So let's jump back into Business Central now and just take a look at some concepts of specific posting groups. Okay, so we're gonna cancel out of here and let's just open up some examples. So if I start off, let's say with inventory posting, you can see we have here inventory posting groups. We can click on that and you can see posting groups that are relevant to inventory. So we've got things like finished, raw materials, resale. And again, this is just a demo account. You could have whatever is relevant to the inventory type products that you have. So again, these are all posting groups under the heading of inventory posting groups, and that is in that category of specific posting type. So backing out of this, let's take a look at one other example. If I do bank posting groups, bank account posting groups, click on that. So again, it's relevant to bank accounts. So you have cash, checking, operating. These are things that some average, again, maybe a sales rep, maybe an accountant would go in and they remember that there are 4 posting groups relevant to banks. So they don't need to remember all the various accounts that they're going to find on the chart of accounts. They can just remember the ones that are relevant to what they're interacting with. So it makes it simpler. So let's take a look at one more example just to see how these things can interact with each other. So if I open up a general journal, which, as I've said in my other videos, if you're not familiar with the concept of general journal, it's almost identical to if you're saying a journal entry. They just, in Business Central, they don't call it that way. They say a general journal. So if we click on that, we can come to the general journal and we can make an entry here. So for example, we can come in and let's select a GL account. And if I scroll over here, so this is where we would come in, just like we're putting in journal entries, we could come in here, we say, okay, well, we want to hit a GL account, and we can come in here and say, okay, general posting type. In this case, this is going to be, let's say, a sale. And I can come in here and I can say, all right, the business posting group, which is going to be the who. Remember, we're going to say in this case, it's domestic. And then for general product posting group, we can come in here and say, in this particular case, it's going to be relevant to manufacturing. So by adding these 2 things in here, automatically the system's going to be able to look in and go, okay, good. We've got domestic, we've got manufacturing. This is relevant to a sale. These are the accounts that are going to be hit. So it's going to know based on that matrix, this is exactly where we're going with this. And if I come over here, I can even change this. So right now we have just straight to a GL account. So I would specify, which account are we going to be dealing with? But I can also come over here and let's say I go to fixed asset. So I could select that and I could come over here, which has its own posting groups. And I could specify, all right, we've got all these different posting groups that are specific to fixed assets. We've got things like equipment, goodwill, plant, property, vehicles. All of these things are relevant to that, and it would give further context to the system to know exactly where are the general ledger impacts of whatever I post here, where are they supposed to go from an account standpoint. So with that in mind, let's jump one more time back out to that graphic. And we talked about general, we've talked about specific. Now let's just briefly talk about tax. Tax is quite simple. Again, it's unlike the other ones where you really have to think about what's going on. This one is self-explanatory. You're dealing with taxes. The only 2 splits that you see here is kind of a mirror image of what you saw with general, where you have VAT business posting group and you have VAT product posting groups. And the concept is the same. One is going to be relevant to the who, one is going to be relevant to the what. And the concept of VAT, that's value added tax. That's something you'll see in North America. If you're in other places, like let's say Australia, they use GST. The concept is the same. You've got some kind of tax associated with whatever you're dealing with. And one element of it is going to be hitting from a standpoint of who you're dealing with, and one will be in relation to what you're dealing with. So that's a quick run through of posting groups in Business Central. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and keep in mind on my course website, which I link for down below, I have full-fledged courses on Business Central, including a prep course to get you to pass the consultant certification exam, which is highly sought after. So if you're looking to pass that, by all means, check out the link down below. And with all of that in mind, I hope to see you in the next video.